Alright, so I'm back behind the camera, and this time I'm letting you guys know about the RJ Martin design machine Midtech. So this one is hands down one of my favorite Midtechs, and I think for good reason. So for one, it's built by Three Rivers Manufacturing, and they do some great work. Now I'm going to abbreviate it to TRM from now on, just because I've only said it once so far, and it's starting to be a bit of a mouthful already. But let's start us off with a bit of history about TRM. So they haven't been a household name until recently, but they work behind the scenes making a number of parts for a number of makers out there. I've been told once that if you have a collection of higher end knives, there's a good chance you own parts made by them in your knives. So this one right here was RJ Martin's first Midtech, and if that name sounds familiar, it's because the guy is known for being the king of flippers in the custom world. And this is a Midtech because he personally sharpens and tunes the detent on each of the machines. And that said, the guy really does know what he's doing on both fronts. The edge is razor sharp, easily one of the best factory edges I've gotten, and the knife has one of the best actions of a non-custom I've felt. Definitely it's the best in its price range. So just the fact that RJ Martin tuned these himself should have made them a huge hit, and I don't know why, but it just never took off. So I got this one on a whim, and I've been blown away with it so far, so I'm bringing it before you guys. But before I start rambling anymore, here's a size comparison. Here it is up against a Hinderer XM24. I'll put that up here, this in the middle. And an XM18 3.5. So it's hard to see with the camera angle going on here, but it's somewhere in between the two of them. So it's not quite as big as a 24, but it's bigger than the XM18. It's actually pretty close to the XM18, but it packs a little bit more blade into it. Another thing you can see is when it's closed, it's basically the same size. So it's a much more compact design in general. Oh, wrong one. Okay, so moving back to the action. So that's probably the main reason why you're here. It's the main reason people pick up an RJ Martin. And this one right here just has a perfect double click action. So just listen to that and you'll hear a pop when the detent breaks and unseats. And then you'll hear a snap when it hits the stop pin up top. I think this action's pretty much perfect. It outflips even most customs you'll handle out there. And the best compliment that I can give it is that it really does feel like an action that RJ Martin set himself. It's honestly hard to misfire the knife because once you break the detent, that blade's going to fly out on those bearings. It doesn't exactly fall shut, but that's mostly due to a high lock bar tension on it from the lock bar. And combined with how deep the detent ball sits, I'm going to try and see if I can show that. Yeah, about right there. Yeah, it just kind of sucks the blade in, and you see how deeply the detent ball sits into it. You combine those two together, it means you have a pretty hard detent. So if you're completely opposed to hard detents, this probably isn't a knife for you. But for as hard as the detent is though, it's not particularly uncomfortable to flip. The flipper on it is well placed, it's well shaped, and it's well chamfered on all sides. Pretty rounded, but it's a bit too chamfered if you ask me. Every once in a while you'll slip back on the flipper like that, especially if you just have it and you're not used to it because this part rounds up a little bit. Then you don't have any jimping on here to really catch your finger on. So it's gotten much better after I own it. You kind of come at it from an angle, where it's like instead of just pulling back on it, you have to press at an angle right here. That hooks it in. It follows the frame and just pops the blade out. I would have minded if they added a bit of jimping to it just to make that a little bit easier. But when it's open, the flipper falls right into place and forms a guard for your finger right here. And I guess that brings us to a blade. So this one right here is in CTS XHP with a stonewash finish. So the edge is mostly straight on the bottom with a bit of belly at the very tip. And the tip also drops down quite a bit, so if you draw a line from the middle of the knife, it's a bit below that. So the main grind is hollow with a sponto-ish thing going on in front. You can just barely see it when the light catches it just right. It really is just a change in angle since it's hollow on the... Yeah, it's just a change in angle on the grinder because the edge is hollow as well over there. So it's not exactly what I call a compound grind and not exactly what I would call like a hinder or sponto. And as I said before, the final edge was put on there by R.J. Martin himself. So it's sharp all the way, and it's sharp all the way down to the edge of the choil right there. And that choil, I have to say, is pretty well done. I prefer slightly oversized finger choils to give you a little bit more leeway, but this one's alright too. Just means you can't really choke up too well over here. But yeah, it's comfortable. It's pretty good. It's a bit too narrow on the forward part right over here. So you'll feel that if you really bear down, but it's not really a big deal. It's got this swedge up top as well. It looks really nice with the blade and fits with the overall design, but if you look at the spine, the narrowest part of the spine is right over here. It's not sharp or anything, but if you like to put your thumb up here like I sometimes do, it gets uncomfortable pretty fast. It's not sharp or anything, it's rounded, but it's just too narrow up here to be ergonomic, especially if you're really bearing down on the knife. So moving back from that, you'll see some jimping right here. It's on the raised thumb ramp. I wouldn't exactly call this jimping too functional. It's overly rounded and it feels mostly smooth to a touch. Don't get me wrong, it's better than if it wasn't there, but it won't exactly grab you back when you put your finger on it. That said though, with the way this thing is shaped overall, it doesn't really matter too much. So overall design of it means you won't really slide up, and it's on a thumb ramp, so it's not exactly the only thing keeping your thumb from sliding. I would prefer if it gave me a bit of extra grip, but that's just my preference. So moving back to a frame right here, just a quick note about the pivot. I had to take this one out and Loctite it since it was loosening up on me when I was flipping it in the beginning, but that's not too unusual. It happens every once in a while with designs. But I have to say, going by the internals, this is a pretty confidence-inspiring pivot. It's good, strong design, it's got good long threading, it has a long screw, and it's just well done in general. But yeah, it's not why you're here, so we're going to talk about the actual frame itself right now. So this is the monkey edge, I'll see if I can show the logo. This is the monkey edge frag pattern version of the knife. And this version in particular is about $35 more than the actual normal version with the wavy pattern milling, but I do really prefer this one over the other. So yeah, this one's $385 new from Monkey Edge, and I wanted to say the originals are somewhere around $350. We'll get into a price later. But if you look at it, there's no anodizing or any fancy colors on the frame or anything like that. It's just bare metal, and that's kind of the way I like it on this design. It kind of fits with the name Machine overall, and it's always a nice touch when they kind of match the name with the overall package. So I'm going to bring the knife a little bit closer, give you some looks at it. So as you can see, there are no attempts to actually hide the machine marks on the frame, but that's not to say the frame's unfinished or anything like that. You definitely feel the pattern, but it's just not very deeply cut in there. So it's still fairly smooth to the touch. It also has a tumbled finish on top as well that's kind of hard to show with everything going on. But yeah, overall I think it just adds to a whole machine-made aesthetic that it's got going on here. So at a short glance, you'll probably think of this one as just another titanium frame lock flipper, but I honestly don't think this is a boring knife once you get into the details. It's solid, it's well machined titanium on both sides, and these actually aren't just flat slabs. They've been shaped and contoured, and it's all rounded on the edges, so they took some time to make this right. And then when you look at it from the spine, you actually see that these aren't flat slabs. It's got this wavy Coke bottle type thing going on here, where it's wider, where it's at its widest here, and at the very end. So if you were to like draw a line, it would just kind of go like that. It bulges out in the middle, kind of like a palm swell that you might see in a fixed blade. And that combined with the shape of the frame just makes it one of the most comfortable knives I own. So everything on it is pretty well rounded. A bit too rounded on the blade, but on the handle that's really nice. Zero hot spots, and everything is shaped to lock into your hand, even in a couple different grips. You can choke up over here. The thumb over thing, if you're not using it too long, I guess it's okay. Back here, hammer grip. Left or right hand, still pretty good. It's also comfortable when you go to unlock it. As you can see, there's like this cutout on both sides right here. And it gives you a nice place for your thumb to grip into when you go to unlock the knife. The only complaint, I guess, is that with the cutouts on both sides and with the way the frame kind of slopes in right here before it bulges back out, it makes this part of the blade a little bit thin. It's not at all uncomfortable unless you're really doing a lot of cutting for an extended period of time, but it's the only thing resembling a hot spot on the frame, so I'm just going to throw that out there. So what those cutouts do, though, is it makes the lock fairly easy to disengage. Even with the high lock bar tension on here making the hard detent, it's pretty hard to move the thing out of the way. And then when you're unlocking it, it will always clear the detent ball because the detent hits very early on the tang, about right over here if you want the angle. So with the way you normally do it, just hit your thumb right here, it's already way past the detent ball by the time you let go of the lock bar. So the centering on mine is a little bit, just slightly close to the front side, but it's not enough that I really care. It's not ideal, but it won't cause me any issues. It doesn't rub the side even when I push against it. Actually, it barely even moves when it's in there, so that's always a sign of quality. So it has a solid lockup. There's no play whatsoever when it's locked. Can't show play on camera, but again, it's the thought that counts. Yeah, no play whatsoever, no side to side, no up and down, and there's not even side to side play when it's actually unlocked. So I think TRM just did a great job with this one overall. In the back, you got this black G10 backspacer. I'm going to close this up before I stab myself. Yeah, so you got this black G10 backspacer right here. Some of you might not like that, but without it, I think the knife would have just been overly metallic silver or whatever. It helps offset it a little bit, and I think it makes it a little bit more interesting than if it was just metal or just standoffs. So the thing is very well rounded, just like the frame, and it has raised jimping right here where the frame kind of dips in. And in your hand, when you're holding it, probably open it up. Yeah, it helps fill this part of your hand right here. It gives you something to kind of hold back there, because if it wasn't there and it just had that part where the frame slopes in, it would have been a bit unusual. It would have been kind of awkward, but I'm glad they put it in because it just works overall. It comes to a point at the very end that's very well rounded as well, so it's not going to stab you, but it's there for all your glass breaking needs. So, moving on to a clip. This is a weird one for me. So this clip checks all the boxes for things I normally hate in a clip. It's big, it's tall, its tension on it is unusually strong. And it even sits right on top of the frag pattern milling. Weird thing is that I actually like it. Everything about this one is done well. I normally don't like big clips because it gets in the way of the ergonomics. This one honestly adds to it because it fills your hand in the middle right here. And with that high tension, it's not moving around in your hand either, so it just feels like a solid part of the frame. Tight tension on the clip and a textured surface usually eats up your pockets, but this one honestly isn't too bad. Sure, it takes a lot more work to get it into your pocket when you're actually trying to pocket it, but with the way the pattern is, it's pretty shallow and it's mostly smooth. So overall, I think it's a pretty solid design with that clip. So where the machine really shines though, I think is the price. You get a lot for your money here, and it's no secret right now that I love the design. And even at $385 retail, and that's for the more expensive frag pattern version that you see right here, I think it still beats most of the competition. You're getting a Midtech from a well-respected custom maker that's been hand-tuned by the man himself. You get full tie construction on the handles, it's shaped, contoured, and rounded, so you know he put some time into it. It has an action that's easily up there with the best you'll find. So yeah, I think that if you like the design and you have even a passing interest in a hard detent like this one, you have no reason not to pick it up. Considering his base model customs go for at least 1,500, you're getting a hell of a deal here. I'm just going to flip it a few more times. Just so you have a sense of it. Some last shots right here. And that's all I got for you today. Take care.